Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Prepare to have your bones chilled and your hairs raised. It's the WacArnold's Brothers Podcast.
Welcome home.
Whoa. That's right. The boys are back in town. That's goddamn. David, I got you here. We're sitting down here for episode 13.
Yeah, lucky number 13.
Lucky number 13.
We should have filmed it on Friday, you know.
If we had better foresight. But yeah, man, this is like, 13's a good number to reach, especially for a horror movie podcast, I think.
Yeah.
I was thinking recently, I started watching, I kind of fell asleep while watching Jason Goes to Manhattan or whatever.
Classic.
But I love, that movie is just like, I was watching it on the 13th and I was just like, I forgot how much I enjoy that point in like the Jason Voorhees like sort of like saga where it's like they've just embraced him as like this unstoppable force in a way, and you can really do a lot with the character at that point. So it's such a fucking fun movie.
That's great. So people have done it before, but I watched I think it was Paramount Pictures that actually did it because they put out some of the original movies. They did a super cut of every single kill from the first 8 movies. Oh, it's fucking amazing. It's just like just all these gruesome deaths in a row. It's awesome.
Just back to back to back. Hey, wasn't there, just off the top of my head, wasn't there like a band for a while named after the actor for Jason? Kane. Yeah, they were like from Kane Hodder. They were from like the Seattle area. Yeah, they were on that like something about ramen or whatever like label, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I always thought that
album back in the day. Like there's some good. Yeah,
I would actually. I wonder if that's like on. I'd have to look it up to see if they're like on, some YouTube or some streaming service.
Idea. Yeah. But yeah, I like them instantly for the name alone. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure. I was just like, I bet these cats are cool. But
that's some decent music, yeah.
But unfortunately, hot dogs, we're not talking about Jason movies today.
No, we're talking about I think the word lesser known is an understatement, but a lesser known killer and movie here.
It's like a gem that needs to be polished still. It's like,
I mean, it has some good qualities, but
anyway, the very bold undertaking, Edge of the Axe.
Yeah.
All right.
A 1988. There's like Spanish actors in it. I guess it was like an American and a Spanish co-production. The Spanish title of the name is Al Filo del Hacha.
Yeah, dude, there's like Spanish covers and stuff for it that like kind of, like feature like different. I don't know. I like the cover that they have on the Shutter, but there's like other ones that kind of look really cheesy and have like the Spanish name on there. Yeah. But I mean, the cheese on the covers is only like touching on the cheese that you get in this movie. Right. Like there was. This movie just kind of like drops you into itself, and like I don't know, like it's hard to like figure out for a really long time where you're supposed to like who you're supposed to be paying attention to, you know what I mean? Whether it's like the
just kind of just jump around from all these fucking characters, like
so like I mean, even like just in like the opening, it's like you really just get dumped into this like car wash sequence, which is one of the sequences that I read was filmed in Madrid. A lot of this was filmed in like California area, but there was like some random stuff that was filmed in Madrid, which I thought was super random. But it's like it like jumps right into that like car wash scene where you're just like, okay, this just lady who's like smoking a cigarette in her vehicle going through the car wash, like And then like, you know, she gets the fucking axe.
How did the killer get in there like with the mask and the outfit and not in broad daylight and not get seen? And then like, because you know, the instant that car came out of the car wash, they would have figured out this person's fucking chopped
done.
up in the
Yeah, that's why I kept thinking. I was
it's
like,
a cool looking sequence though.
It is. That was the thing. I like, you know, there was quite a few different scenes that were really well shot actually throughout this movie. But I mean, it was a cool like sequence. You could kind of tell that it was gonna, you know, something was about to happen. But again, it just felt super abrupt, like just kind of like right into the middle there, and then like out of nowhere, it kind of pans down into like the Red Cross thing.
Yeah,
that really doesn't come up till like the end of the like movie maybe, and then you're still like, I still didn't even think about it until like just a little bit ago, where I was like, oh.
Yeah, it does. It like sits on the image of this sticker for a good like 30 to 45 seconds.
Yeah, and like apparently that's supposed to tell you that this lady's a nurse, which comes into play later on.
I think she is wearing like.
Was she wearing
nurse
scrubs?
hat.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I just
And the
wasn't
white
like,
outfit. She's not wearing scrubs. She's wearing like that like 80s like white nurse outfit, you know.
Yeah, like kind of like button up, maybe a cardigan over the top.
But yeah, so that's this first death, and then I think one thing I liked is that so it shows this guy riding on a motorbike who turns out to be Gerald. But anyway, when the opening credits are going, I like the way they did it, where it looks like it's like 80s computer typing.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, it comes across the screen like edge of the axe. Like it kind of looks like it's like which is cool because honestly, like going into this movie, unless you like immediately read like the, you know, like the kind of plot thing, I didn't really think of like computers being a heavy play in this movie until it started happening. But like that was a really cool indicator as well, that you're like, this is another sort of 80s computers can do anything kind of movie.
Yeah, which is a thing kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get introduced to Gerald, and he pulls up to it kind of explains later that, you know, he's newer to town, and he's staying at this guy's Brock's place, and this guy Brock's like a hermit, and he makes all these different comments about, you know, not liking technology, and he just is this simple, you know, simple folk, you know.
Yeah, he's like makes a comment about how much like he had to pay in terms of like the electric bill, and he's like, I don't even like that or whatever. Like they really built him up as like the opposite of what Gerald kind of is.
Right. And Gerald just got this like new computer, so he goes to set it up, and there's the place he's living in, the little apartment or little like side house he's living in is really cool. It's super futuristic looking.
Yeah, I was actually really like, I thought it was cool too. I was like, that's a cool set, man. Because, you know, they're in it later on also, and that was another thing I kind of liked about this movie was, like some of the setting was really nice. You know, the other place I think it was filmed was like Bear Lake or something like that in California. So, you know, and that's like, you know, the opening sequence when you're talking about him riding through, that's actually him riding through town.
Yeah,
which Bear
it's like
Lake,
a small town.
Yeah, but you know, like there's that back and forth between Gerald and Brock, and it ends with him like Gerald gives Brock this like box, and you know, he's like, that's for you or whatever, and then you find out later what it is, but it was, and you know, it's just kind of funny because I don't really know how much of that relationship comes into play throughout any of the other part of the movie.
I think it only shows Brock like one other time, and it's just like another, you know, like passing comment about, I don't like those newfound gizmos or something like that.
Oh man, yeah, it's like, yeah. Anyway, but I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I feel like Gerald kind of looks like Mark Hamill in Star Wars: A New Hope. He has a very similar haircut.
Yeah, he does.
So I kept calling him Luke while watching this movie, but yeah. So that's where like they find another, like there's like this whole other instance where kind of right after this, Gerald and his buddy Richard, they go to do their thing. They're like, Richard's like an exterminator, and I imagine Gerald's maybe like working on the side with them or some shit.
Yeah.
But they discover, like, they're at like a tavern, and they're
Coggy's bar. Yeah, it's like this little
Coggy's.
They go to this little tavern, and the guy's like, "There's a weird smell in the cellar. Like, can you go investigate it?"
Can you go investigate it? Yeah, and so they do, and it turns out it's a fucking rotting corpse.
It's like, I like the way it falls out of the little part in the cellar. There's like, they're like checking it out, and there's a little like maybe entrance to a storage in the cellar or whatever, and the body's just like,
yeah, just swings right down at him.
And it looks like it's been chilling there for a while. Yeah,
it actually looked pretty gnarly. But that leads to them calling the authorities, and they haul the body away. And there's what was that?
Of course, the authorities are like, "No, this is a small town, and we don't want people, getting the wrong idea. So let's just keep it hush hush about this. Maybe it was a suicide or something."
Yeah, exactly, dude. They're just like immediately like, well, how do we just write this off? Which is so fucking crazy. But there's this one cop, and you see him for the first time, I think, in this scene, who's like this like Chuck Norris looking motherfucker. He is. Yeah. He's like a B-list Chuck Norris. He's got the mustache and like some of the wrinkles on his face, and he's technically like kind of like dressed up like Walker.
Yeah, but I thought the same thing too. I was like, that guy looks like suspiciously a lot like Chuck Norris. Yeah,
he's Chuck in an incognito role. But yeah, so there's that sequence, and that kind of is like, I mean, obviously there's something going on. Like there's someone on the loose in this town now.
There was also like another short sequence before that where it's this lady who's got like a hog farm, and she doesn't get killed, but the killer, she finds a pig's head, a decapitated pig's head in her bed.
Yeah.
And that's once again the sheriff's like, well, that could have been anything. Like,
he blames it on an animal.
Yeah. He basically just disregards it, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
It is what it is. But yeah, so we start to see there's maybe something going on in this town.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Then, what were you gonna say?
Oh, go for it. I was just thinking about that pig.
And then the next scene, we kind of get introduced to a bunch of different characters, because Richard and Gerald are driving, and we're talking about Richard's wife, who we find out is this older lady who's, supposedly rich. So we end up meeting her. We meet another bartender named Susie that Richard's flirting with, even though he's married. And then we meet the other kind of like she is the main character, Lillian, who works at her father's tavern. And she's there for the summer because she's usually in school, she says. So we get introduced to all these characters pretty quickly here.
Yeah. And Gerald and Lillian kind of, they start clicking.
Yeah, they play a arcade game.
Yeah, exactly. So they start clicking. Like technology seems to be their thing, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this. Then that kind of leads directly into like, I think one of the next murder sequences, right? Which is like what's her name?
Before that, it shows Lillian and Gerald back at his place, and he's showing her his new computer.
Oh God, yeah. Sorry.
And he mentions that he mentions that he has another one that she can take, and so they can chat. And I love that during this scene, there's all this like different computer jargon that he throws out, that it feels like the director just looked up like fancy computer words, because the guy's just saying stupid stuff like, oh, you got to connect it to the gateway hub and all this and it all sounds so stupid.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's sort of one of the things I love about some of these older movies is like, you just look at like their naivety towards tech and towards this technology, and you're just like,
Yeah.
it's just
And then
so
there's just, like,
funny.
Stupid little sequence where he's explaining to her that you can ask the computer anything and it'll answer it. So she
Oh
like
my god.
types up a question and he's like, well, what's the answer? And she's like, it says cannot compute or something like
Yeah.
that. And then they turn around and kiss, and she was like, oh, I asked the computer if you were gay.
That
So
honestly was probably one of the most shocking parts of the whole movie to me, because I was like, what kind of joke is that?
Oh, Jesus. So, yeah, they instantly hit it off.
Yeah. But oh my god, yeah, that computer, man. Like, I wish I had that computer now, because it turns out you can ask it anything.
Yeah. There's no way that was. Yeah, that was. But then the next death scene happens.
Yeah. And that's like that. I looked it up, and it literally says beautician and prostitute Rita Miller. So it's like she, has a day and nighttime gig apparently. But yeah, there's this like there's a sequence where Rita is getting followed home, and
she gets like a phone call. And,
and what got me about this whole thing was that like eventually like it culminates, there's like the spookiness kind of build, and she's like looking over her shoulder and all that, you see like clearly there's somebody following her. She ducks and hides and all that, and then next thing you know, that she's kind of confronted with the killer or the guy that's following her. And in like a fairly slow fashion, the dude like reveals himself, like puts on his mask, it seems like, grabs his axe out, and the lady's just standing there watching him the entire time.
Because at first she thinks that like,
maybe it's a client.
It doesn't explain until the next scene where the police are talking about it that she's a prostitute, but she's like, oh, there you are. Yeah. And then like you said, the guy just like very casually, puts on the mask.
Yeah, we were just thinking about it, and we were just like, I was just like, that doesn't make sense why she would just I would be like, ooh, I'm out of here. Anyway, she gets fucking chopped, dude. Like, she, that was the thing about some of these killings that I thought was like kind of cool, was that like they didn't really even like, I'd say like one or two swings looked really good, and then like you'd catch like multiple like smaller ones that were kind of like these like little soft like pats on the gotcha, but they were fucking like each kill, and like you see multiple kind of like chops, I think, almost. And I was like, that's pretty harsh. Sometimes you just get like the one and you're done. And like, so I was like, it was kind of, some of the killings were pretty decent in this movie. But anyway, again, like you were saying, like the next day, her body is found on the train tracks. It's crushed by a train, I think. But I believe. So.
Apparently, it looks like hamburger meat. One of the police officers says.
It's some hamburger meat right there. Oh god. But yeah, and that's where you learn that she's got she might be a prostitute and all that. And I think this is sort of where oh god, the computers come back into play, right? It's like, so
well, I mean, but a thing to note about here is that it's like another scene where the cops are like, well, maybe it was an accident. They're not willing to admit yet that anything's afoot in their small town. It could still be an accident, yada, yada, yada.
Also, side note, we haven't even discussed the appearance of the killer yet.
Yeah.
So the mask that the killer uses is like this wild thing. I immediately thought of like this weird like fucking mash between like Jason and Michael Myers.
It is a little bit.
But it's like this,
it's just like white, yeah,
it's like this full white like face mask.
It kind of looks like when you see behind the scenes footage of them making like a face cast of someone's face, and they put all the putty on it, and then they pull it off, and it's like a white head of them. That's kind of what the mask looks like.
No, for real. That's a good call. That's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, it looks like sort of almost like a purposefully incomplete mask of some sort.
It is kind of creepy though.
It is. It's actually really creepy, and that was going to be my next point. I was like, it definitely had a good effect, but yeah, I just love that. Like every time you see the killer, the axe is also like really pristine. Like it's like really, really clean. So there's like never any like extra like I don't know. It was just like some random thing that stood out to me. I was like, it's like this killer takes the time in between to like really like polish up their axe and their weapon.
So next, there's like before the next killing or the next computer scene, like there's some scenes in this movie that are just kind of useless. Like there's a guy working at he's like a woodworker at the church, and police officer Frank McIntosh comes in to ask him some questions because he works with sharp objects and he was in Rita's Black Book. Like they don't really do any more of this like investigating who the killer could be much. So it's kind of just a stupid scene. And then it shows, but also there's a scene where Richard and Susan, the bartender from earlier, are out on the boat and they're flirting, and like it shows them do that like 2 more times, but there's really no payoff for that either.
Exactly. That was one of the things like I thought when watching it. I was just like, there's so much that seems like unnecessary about in this movie. It's just filler in a movie that doesn't really need filler.
Exactly.
You know, but yeah, like especially the boating scenes, because they were just like gratuitous. There was just like, you know, it was just like multiple shots of them just going like back and forth on like, you know, just like
pointless.
Yeah, it was just bizarre.
There's also like a random scene where Gerald brings Lily in the computer, and then we get the next cool death scene.
Yeah. But I think it's before the death scene though that Lillian discovers like the list of women on Gerald's computer.
You're right, because it shows them and they're at like lunch, and she asks him about it, but then it gets kind of just, you know, thrown to the side. But yeah, we learn that Richard has like this, or you say it, like you were gonna mention it. So
well, yeah, I mean, it was just that, like, you know, like I said, like that, you know, she finds the list and like, you know, they brush it aside. But my point was that this was like really where they start painting this, like it starts getting really kind of hard to figure out who might be the killer. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because they really start trying to get, like, sort of drop clues on like a good few people. Gerald right here, like Richard, you kind of think maybe because like maybe he's trying to, you know, get out of his marriage, or maybe get, you know, anyway, there's just like, I don't know, it was just like an interesting part of this, like this film overall, where it's like really you think, I don't know, you have a hard time figuring out who to follow.
I think what they did is like, I think they thought that with the reveal at the end and everything, that they wanted to go for like a whodunit theme, but they don't do it enough in the movie, where there's a couple scenes where, you know, there's, you know, Richard was investigating or says this or that, which we'll get into, but yeah, I don't know. It was like they could have leaned more into that, but they kind of just had that it's like a minor, you know, plot point, and didn't really focus it heavily enough for it to feel like it was like a murder mystery.
Yeah, fair enough. It wasn't full on murder mystery. It was a lot more murder. But what were you saying about Richard?
Nothing. I was just gonna say that you know, his role in the movie could have essentially been written out, because, like, I don't know, he's not really essentially, he's in a couple scenes here and there, which we'll talk about later, but I don't know, he's just kind of like a random character.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you there, but it felt like, again, like they sort of needed to just like fill like a cast out almost, so they kept like, you know, they kept these kind of roles in, which really didn't amount to much, you know.
And just to correct both of ourselves, it actually, the scene where she finds the file hasn't happened yet. It's actually after the next
it is after the next death scene,
which is fine, but
yeah, fair enough. But okay, so where are we at in the movie now?
So now it goes back to the the hog farmers.
Yeah, and it's another windstorm kind of. Well, there's a windstorm kicking up and stuff.
It's like the power's flickering out, and she lights a candle and is walking around her house, and then you see the axe on the living room table, and you're like, "What the hell?" And then boom, the killer bursts in.
Yeah, oh god, that opened at a bad time. Which like this sequence, like there's a little more chase to it. It's like it's not necessarily like just like a slash, like immediate kill. Like the first kill you see was just like murderer busting in, killing the person. This one, like he kind of chases the lady through the house a little bit. There's like that almost like a bit like The Shining, where you think you might have that moment where the dude's like trying to bust through the door with his axe.
Yeah, she barricades herself in the kitchen.
Yeah. She gets her fingers chopped, if I'm correct, right?
No, that's
the latest. Oh my god,
that's later. Yeah, but that's awesome. But yeah, so I think the way this lady dies is so like she ends up running outside. She runs into the barn, and then it's like she wasn't even in there for 20 seconds. She looks out the window and is like, "Oh, I don't see anybody. Let's go back outside."
Yeah, she like goes through, because this is like the lights on. I think at this time when she runs to the barn, and like she gets through the pigs, and so she turns the light off, and like you're right. She goes in there for just a little bit, and then immediately like turns around.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing?
But the killer, dude, this is the killer. The killer was smart, man. He was like laying on the ground, and so she comes running out, and she just like whap and gets her like right in the fucking back, dude.
And then hacks her to death, yeah.
Dude, and then hacks her, yeah. And again, like the hacking in this movie, fucking, I will say, a lot of people tasted the edge of the axe in this fucking movie, man.
Right. And then like then it shows the scene where she finds the file, and then it's like it shows the police, cleaning up the crime scene of this victim, and this is when Frank finally is admitting that there's something bad going on. It took fucking multiple deaths.
All right, guys, I think there's something happening around here. I know, like what a shit fucking cop. But let's see. What's the next? At some point here, Richard finds.
Yeah, so they're
one of the victims. Yeah, they're out in the boat. This is the only time the boat thing actually fucking applies.
Yes. They're like on the boat making out, and Richard's like, I gotta go back to work, and then the boat won't start. And
classic. And so what's her name again? Susan. When she goes, like, she first discovers something kind of floating back there, and she actually touches it if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she goes to like pull it out of the propeller or something.
Yeah, and it's like a fucking nasty looking severed head.
It's like decomposed, like it had been there for a minute.
Yeah, it's fucking gross.
Just some female's fucking decapitated head.
Mm-hmm. And again, later on, you actually kind of learn some context for that.
Well, it's like the next scene. It's like Richard and Gerald are playing darts, and Richard mentions that it was a psychiatric nurse.
Yeah.
So then this is when you're kind of like, if you're paying attention, you're like, oh, so that's another nurse that's dying. Like, like there might be a connection here. Because some of the other kills are random, like the hog farmer or the prostitute. But then there's two killings that were nurses, and you're like, I wonder if there's something going on here.
Yeah, but yeah, it does kind of like, because they happen, or at least you discover them sort of like after like two other kills. At least for myself, like I didn't immediately make that connection. I was sitting there thinking like, okay, psychiatric nurse.
Right.
But let's see. There's also like another. It's not a human death that happens kind of in this like chunk of the movie.
Yeah, there's another death that's about to happen right now.
Is it?
What's that?
What were you saying?
Because it goes to a scene where there's like, it keeps going to these different church scenes throughout the movie, which aren't super important, but it goes to this church scene, and there's a couple of the ladies, and they're talking about who they think the killer might be, yada, 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 and then it shows one of them, and she goes home. And this is what I think you might be talking about, where she dies too, but she also finds the body of her fucking dead dog, which was super brutal.
Dude, it was hard. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm one of those
I
people
hate
that always cringes at like dead dogs in movies and stuff like that. You're just like, oh,
It's just so unnecessary. But the way she finds it is cool.
yeah, that's true. But it definitely looked gnarly. But again, so this was sort of, like kind of the killer kind of like traps her in the house, and this is like what I was talking about earlier, where she gets her fingers chopped, and that was fucking like that was cool. Like
she's like blindly looking for shotgun shells in the closet.
Yeah, and then just whap, dude, and she pulls her hand away, and it's like 4 fucking fingers.
That would fucking
dude.
suck.
That would be so gnarly. Like I would definitely lose my shit in that situation.
And then she also subsequently gets hacked to death.
Yeah. She gets the edge. She gets the
And then there's after this is a pretty kind of important scene for the rest of the movie, for the ending.
Are you talking about Lillian and Gerald?
Yeah.
So this is kind of the sequence where you sort of catch some backstory about Lillian in particular.
Yeah.
And
she confessed, she like opens up
to Gerald. Because then their burgeoning relationship, their blossoming love.
Yes.
But yeah, so she reveals that she was actually in a mental hospital relating.
Well,
no. Her cousin. No, she said it was Charlie, right?
Yeah, her cousin Charlie. An incident happened when they were a kid where she
was pushing him on a swing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it went awry, and he got a head thing, and then she kind of just mentions that like he went to a mental hospital, which I don't understand why you would go to a mental hospital after getting in a swing accident. Like they don't really
give you that. That's what I kept thinking too. I was like, damn, dude, that kid's got it. Like, rough, man. He gets his head fucked up, and then they're like, okay, man, you're stupid now. We're putting you in a mental hospital.
But she mentions that like she went to look him up a couple years ago where he might be, and that apparently 2 years ago he was released, and she's scared of him, and she's afraid that he might be the one that's doing all the killings.
Yeah. And so again, like like you're immediately like, okay, that's got to be the tie with like the nurses now and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, just that whole story just was so out of left field for when watching this. I was like, what? And I mean, like, it's kind of interesting in context with the twist later on, but
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is where like Lillian and Gerald have been like communicating via computer a lot. Like, there's like these random scenes sometimes where they're like, like, are you there? And like, they'll just be like waiting for somebody to respond, but at some point, this is like another instance of like Lillian kind of using Gerald's computer because she's like supposedly researching something. Like she claims she's researching something, because he catches her on the computer or whatever. Yeah,
because before that though, there's like another church scene which is kind of useless, and then there's a scene where Lillian and Gerald are kind of like on a little date, and they're by a swing set, and they get in like a little argument.
Yeah, that's
and she's
right.
pushing them on the swing, and she has a flashback of like, which isn't necessarily important. But anyway, so they get it's insinuated that they get into an argument because the next scene is Gerald arriving back to his place in the middle of the night, and it's like raining outside, and he goes into his place and he finds this is what you're talking about, where he finds Lillian on the computer, and he he sees what she was looking up, and it was like stuff about psychiatric doctors and stuff, and you're like, what's this about?
Yeah. And then they get into that sort of back and forth, and that's at this point, you think like Lillian is trying to just straight up figure out what's up with like where Charlie's at and like or whatever.
What he's doing.
But it doesn't. There's like, where is it? It's got to be coming up at some point. But you know, like Charlie isn't like. I don't know. I for some reason at this point in the movie, I still kind of got this like really like suspicious vibe from Gerald, you know, and I think that was really well played out.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. But yeah, so you know they have their argument. Then there's this really awkward like drying off sequence for the it's like moves along. Also, side note. This is one of those scenes that reminded me there's like so much. I don't know if this was intentional product placement, but there is so much of it in the movie. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like every
Coke earlier,
every can of Sunkist was facing the camera. You know, like
for
all
real.
these things. And this is one of those.
Yeah,
I was like, what?
The glass Gatorade fucking bottle. Yeah,
yeah, dude, for real. I was like, damn, they either made some money off of this or like this is just all they all got lucky. Anyway,
we haven't really talked about, you know, because it hasn't really showed up. So the next scene is like the first real time that we get that Laura's in the movie, who is Richard's supposedly rich wife. But in this scene, she's kind of talking with like a financial advisor, and we learn that she's bankrupt. And this sequence kind of leads into another sequence where she's out having some drinks with this guy named Christopher, who it shows him this through the movie. He works at the church and he is like the conductor for the church band or whatever. And they're out having some drinks. And she kind of is like, you know, well, now that I'm poor, no one's going to want me. Like, yada, yada, yada.
So there's this moment though, he like looks her in the eyes and then finishes his drink and then grabs hers and finishes her drink.
And then they leave the bar drunk. Yeah, they just like stumble out to the car. And this scene is super funny before they die because they're like driving in the car.
And she's like, he's like passing out against her. Like, she keeps like shoving him over and stuff.
Which results in them crashing ultimately.
Unfortunately.
And then they die, which like she gets out and
so the dude dies like in the car accident, I'm pretty sure. Right. And like
it doesn't well, you don't know, it doesn't show him die, but you find out later that he's dead.
Yeah, well, like because like there's this brief moment where she like, you know, like he's slumped over or something like that, and she moves him and he doesn't like respond at all or whatever.
Right.
And so you're just like, damn, dude, that guy's fucking aced. And then when she gets out of the car, walks away from the vehicle, like a ways
to get you know to like gather herself.
Yeah. And then that's like when she's like, that's when she gets attacked, right? Like,
she turns around and goes back to the car, and she's trying to get him to respond again, but it's not him; it's the killer now. The killer's there instead.
Yeah.
And, the third chase scene of the movie ensues, and they're like running through the forest, and she ultimately trips and then gets hacked into bits. You know.
Yeah. This killer gets lucky sometimes. You know, these people just tripping, just waiting for the axe, you know?
There was a cool shot here where I take that back. She actually doesn't get hacked. It doesn't show the death. So it shows the killer like go to swing the axe, and then it cuts to a scene of Gerald cutting wood. And then this is where like Richard comes back because he was out of town, and he explains to Gerald that, you know, he thinks Laura has disappeared and that she took all of the money out of the bank and left him nothing and ran off with the car, you know.
Yeah, that's right. And
which is what I'm saying, where I think that they were trying to kind of build this as like a murder mystery, but they didn't do it enough, but they did it like a few different times, where this is one of those scenes that could have built to an overall bigger murder mystery thing, but they didn't, you know.
Yeah, they just didn't flush it out enough, you know.
Exactly. Like,
yeah, there's like breadcrumbs like all over this thing, but it's like, so like you have the kind of interaction with Gerald and Richard, and then you also go to the crime scene or like the car accidents, scene. And that's when Mick McIntosh, Officer which I love the name. I got to be honest.
Frank McIntosh.
Yeah.
Just a strong name.
Frank McIntosh draws a line in the sand, and if you cross it, you're breaking the law.
Well, yeah, he's like finally like, man, he's finally distraught with all these deaths.
Yeah, but he finds a like name tag or whatever from the tavern, Neb's Tavern. At the crime scene, and so that immediately is like, all right, well now they're gonna send the boys over to the tavern to like figure out maybe who done it really.
Which we didn't really talk about, but Nebs is like the father of Lillian and Susan.
Yeah.
And it only shows them like once at that scene near the beginning, but
yeah, it only shows them like getting out of a boat or something like that at one point. I think.
It's kind of really random.
And then like other than that, like you're told that like they're out of town or whatever, basically.
Yeah, because Lillian's like at a church and she's supposed to get a ride home from the pastor because she gets a call from her dad being like, I don't want you at home alone for some fucking reason. Like, there's so many random scenes in this movie that are just like, why was that there?
Yeah, it's like either unnecessary or it feels like they had to shoot it to justify like other parts of the story.
Exactly, which is so stupid.
Yeah, they're like, instead of just writing a better story. Anyway, so...
But yeah, Lily, she makes it home, obviously.
Yeah, but she's home alone.
Yeah, and she's freaked out.
Yeah, she's hearing like weird noises, and so she's, and with everything going on.
She messages Gerald,
Yeah, over the computer with the world's best instant messaging, apparently. I love that every time they sit down with the computer, it's just a blank screen that they just type onto.
I know.
And then the computer somehow hyper processes the information and gives them what they want.
It's fucking ridiculous.
I'm just like, oh my fucking God, dude. I want it. But anyway, so yeah, there's like Lillian's getting creeped out at the house by herself, and eventually she like, Gerald kind of shows up, and
well, yeah, long story short, Gerald shows up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't know it's Gerald because at first it's her like hearing noises, and all you see is
you see like a gloved hand at one point, I think, stuff like that.
A gloved hand try to sneak into the house and eventually get into the house. It's this long drawn out sequence of her locking herself in the bathroom and coming out, and the person making their way upstairs. And then this is where like, the movie comes to where you kind of figure everything out, because she sees Gerald, but she's like, Charlie?
Yeah, she starts thinking that Gerald's Charlie.
Right.
And then like he thinks that Charlie's just fucking made up.
Yeah. He's basically like, there is no Charlie. Like, I've done some, research and.
Yeah, I've used my computer for research purposes, and I've discovered that Charlie doesn't exist.
Yeah, Charlie doesn't exist. And he goes on in this drawn out sequence on, we're going to explain that he did all this research and found out that she was actually the one in the mental hospital for psychoamnesia, and that she was also ruled an acute psychopath. And then he explains, you killed this person because they were your admitting nurse. And
yeah, dude, it's this like gnarly scene kind of though, where like she's not believing him. They've been, there's like a lot of yelling happening off and on basically, and he's like got her like sitting in front of the computer screen, and he's like, see, and he like starts like listing the symptoms off one by one, like like and then they start getting typed out on the computer screen, and then same thing with like the little names of the deaths and stuff. And you're right, he's like, that's when you find out the reasoning behind like the nurse connection and all of that, like,
which was kind of like loose, but
yeah, loose but technically there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I love it because like he does all this, and then he's like, instead of I was thinking that he was going to try to turn her in. He's like, but we can start a new life. Like, like we can start over. Like we can just move.
That was the ultimate twist. Was Gerald was just fucking down. He was just like, yo, let's just get out of this fucking town. We'll find you some doctor to talk to you later on. Like, let's just fucking do this thing. Yeah, we'll get you fixed later.
She's like, no, in a psychotic break. So she picks up the axe. She's trying to get him, and he's trying to corral her and get her to stop. And they tumble down the stairs, and which is a cool scene actually.
It was.
And they make it down the stairs, and you start hearing sirens, and you're like, oh shit, like how's this gonna play out?
And this was actually really cool, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Just the sequence of like the officers pulling up. You see like them getting out of the car. They hear like a screaming or whatever. Then you cut. It shows, Lillian booking it out of the house. Gerald right behind her
with the axe.
With the axe. So they immediately think that he's trying to fucking axe her. And like, boom! Gerald gets a fucking shotgun to the chest. And I was just like, honestly, like this movie was so like, it wasn't a great movie, but that moment had me floored because I was just like, holy shit, like they actually are like taking him out. Like,
yeah,
like I was just blown away. I was like anyway, it was so good. That was so well done. Just because
it was.
Yeah. And then,
I will say that like, it was, the payoff at the end, I guess,
Well, yeah, it definitely kind of pays off, I think. But anyway, so yeah, like that's, the moment that you think like, all right, well, I guess, Lillian's just gonna, maybe they'll discover later on or whatever. But there's this great moment.
Yeah. No, say what you were going to say.
Oh, but there's this great moment right near the end of the movie. And this is something I wish they did more often in modern movies where they're like, they have this shot of Lillian being held by like probably Macintosh, I think, but I don't, and then she like looks all sad and then she smiles.
It was creepy.
And it was creepy as fuck, dude.
He says this great line where he's like, don't worry, honey, there's not going to be any more killings in this town now. And then it's just a creepy fucking smile as the credits start rolling.
Oh, I loved it, dude. It was so creepy.
Well, at least it had a good ending. Yeah,
it had a good ending. Like some of the killings were all right. Like in terms of like, I think just the I don't know. I liked them. They were, but like overall the story was just hot garbage. Like this very loose story. Like the twist was worked. I think, but it's like they had that idea and then tried to like make some sort of hodgepodge thing around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it did not turn out well. Yeah.
No, it did not.
Like it should have either just been a straight slasher, or they should have done more of like the murder mystery and all that. Because, like I said, like we mentioned, they tried to plant seeds, but it just kind of was pointless.
Yeah. It seemed like just it wasn't like, I don't know, it just felt like it wasn't going to go anywhere and for so long, and then like the twist happened and you're just like, okay.
Like I said, there's so many just random pointless like church scenes or other like I don't know, there's a lot of filler.
Yeah, like that, like you're talking about the one scene with the carpenter guy or with the construction guy or whatever.
Don't even like build on anyone in the movie. They don't like investigate anyone else. Like it was just like, what was the point?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know, it's just, this one was interesting. I mean, I really did I appreciated some of the stylistic things about this movie. I think that kind of comes from the like I think the director's influence and sort of like this because like you were saying at the beginning, there is kind of like a Spanish American element to this horror movie, and you see some really cool shots. Like there's some really cool like kind of close up focuses of like a face shots in this movie and stuff like that. But overall, man, I would say that you don't necessarily need to visit the edge, the edge of the axe. But if you have nothing better to do, I would say you could chop down some time with this. So.
Why must you do that? So, oh my God. I mean, it's true.
I have to do it for these reactions.
It's not a very long. It's like an hour and 20 something minutes. Like it's not,
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, although like honestly, dude, this movie could have been like closer to an hour. Like,
I'd been cool with it. Yeah.
Yeah, for real though. Oh man.
I watched have you watched any of the first 3 seasons of the show Slasher?
No.
It's good, but the 4th season just started, and the first 2 episodes are on Shudder, and it's one of the David Cronenberg, who is the father of Brandon Cronenberg, but also who directed a bunch of fucking amazing movies.
David Cronenberg is small role.
He plays a small role in the first 2 episodes, and it's cool. Yeah, go watch it. I feel like.
But you're saying is the entirety of the show up to current on Shudder?
It just started, so the first 2 episodes on there, and then every Thursday from here on out, the next episode will come out.
Okay, but
the first every season is its own contained story.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I could just jump into this current one if I wanted, or I could jump into the past.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
That's
go watch
sick.
the first 2 episodes. It's going to be gruesome and gory.
That's awesome, dude. Cronenberg is one of my all-time favorite fucking movie makers, man. Like, that guy has made some wild fucking pieces of cinema, some creepy pieces of cinema too. Oh god, I love it.
I agree.
All right, man. Do we have any thoughts on next week?
All right, so I don't, but check this out. Maybe I shouldn't say this over here, but I think it would be hilarious at some point to. So you know how obviously we review scary movies. I think it'd be funny as a joke to like review a movie that's so bad it's scary, like Shazam or Wild Hogs.
Dude,
I'm just kidding.
I mean, honestly, I'm down with stuff like that. You know, I'm down with that.
I think we should save that for like next year's April Fool's Day or something.
That'd be good. Dude, Wild Hogs. I love that was the line. That was Shazam or Wild Hogs. God damn.
I mean, they're awful movies.
They are so fucking bad. Dude, smart idea though. All right, well, maybe
we'll figure it out.
Maybe we'll figure it out. Well, Hot Dogs, you'll figure it out along with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would say good movie to kill some time with if you have literally nothing better to do. And those are my final thoughts on this.
It's not highly recommended. Like, I usually recommend it. It's not recommended.
Yeah. Like, I would definitely recommend watching Evil Speak over this movie.
Oh, well, yeah.
100%. You know what I mean?
Better computer-centric horror movie for sure.
Exactly. All right. Well, Hot Dogs, David, I'll see you on the next episode then, eh?
Yes, sir.
All right.